All right, I think we'll get started. I'm gonna say hello here and introduce myself, and then we'll jump into Reclaim. Thank you all for attending our webinar. This is a regular series we do, and yeah, I guess I'm Patrick Lightbody, the co-founder of Reclaim. Might have even spoken to some of you in the past through any sort of support conversations or in our Slack community. And if not, it's great to meet you, and thank you again for joining us. This webinar is kind of open-ended to some degree. It's really what you all want to make of it, and so I invite you to ask questions in the Q&A throughout the session. But generally, what we found has worked well for the last few that we've done is that I start off with a high-level overview of Reclaim, generally pointing out some of the more advanced capabilities, because we do know that almost all of you are active users of the product already. So hopefully, though, you'll learn a few things that you might not have been aware of previously. And then as questions come in, we can kind of dive deeper into some of the other topics. Naturally, if there's any follow-up questions after the webinar, you're also welcome to reach out to us in our support channel or our Slack community, both of which we're heavily engaged in. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. I am going to share my screen, and we'll walk through some of the more kind of interesting and advanced concepts of Reclaim. All right, we got our first question, which I'm going to answer, and then I may have to, unfortunately, briefly restart, which is a shame. We got two questions. So I'll just jump into those as I take this moment to figure out what I'm going to do about getting the screen sharing going. One of the questions was if we're planning to develop a standalone app, or if this will always be a browser-based app. We definitely hope to have native connections into your mobile devices as well as your desktop. That isn't an imminent thing. We're not actively working on that capability right now. That's not to say we're not interested in it. We love keyboard shortcuts. We love voice assistants and other kind of natural convenience inputs. But the main reason is it just there's a lot of stuff that we want to do with the Reclaim roadmap, and so we haven't prioritized that just yet. But the desire is there. For now, what we found is that our mobile app works reasonably well on mobile. And if you're on Android or iPhone, you actually, if you don't know, you can actually add our app to your home screen, and it will kind of behave a little bit like a mobile app. I'm not going to promise that it's exactly like a native mobile app, but that helps. And there are some other tricks I won't go into here where you can actually make Reclaim. We have some customers who have Reclaim show up as like a native app on their desktop as well, where you can kind of wrap it with a browser. But really what we found is that often through our integrations, the biggest reason people are interested in native connections with Reclaim is for kind of rapid data entry of tasks. And what we found is that usually folks end up connecting to, say, Todoist or to Asana, and using those mobile experiences to feed Reclaim and get things blocked out on their calendar. We think there's still a lot of unique and interesting things we can offer, and so we will be doing that in the future, but not today. And so browser-based is our main solution there. And then we also had a question from Claire about active. She said she's an active user and having difficulty adding more time and rescheduling when things come up. And that's a great topic, and we'll definitely jump into that when we get the demo going.
Hey, Patrick, and we had one new question come in.
Can you read the question, Christy, while I just get our last bits set up?
So Reclaim appears to connect specifically to a single calendar to do its manipulations. I actually have several different calendars based on different organizations that I represent. Is there a way to have specific tasks linked into specific calendars?
The short answer right now is no, but that is definitely something we are considering doing. There's a few reasons why we would do that. Sometimes it may be, as the person asked this question might have, is you're a consultant and you want to kind of reflect the brand or identity of the client you're working with, and kind of have either it's maybe a smart one-on-one or a task or a habit kind of appear on that calendar predominantly and reflected that way. The most common reason is personal tasks and personal habits. You might want to just have, in full detail on your personal calendar and appear in a more opaque manner on your work calendar. Both of those are reasons why that's on our roadmap, that capability. We don't offer that today. We kind of require everything centralized through a main calendar. And if you're a consultant, usually that's your consulting practice. Or if you're, someone who has a single day job and a personal calendar, usually it's your work calendar that you make your main, although sometimes people use their personal as their main calendar and kind of flip it around. But today, all habits, tasks, and smart one-on-ones land initially on a single calendar, and then you use our calendar sync feature to get those time blocks to appear on other calendars as well. So yeah, there's a subtlety in that request that we appreciate and have on our roadmap to address. So hopefully that answered that. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all for that. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, let's get started, and more questions can definitely come through as we get going. So I think all of you, if you've all used Reclaim, you've seen this. So I'm just skipping ahead through some of the questions here. I want to pause here for a moment and tell you a little reason why Reclaim asked some of these questions when you were first signing up, and in particular why we asked something like, do you want to make time for lunch, or do you want to make time for catching up on your inbox? Backing up, part of the reason Henry and I founded Reclaim a few years ago, and what our long-term vision is all around this idea that as busy professionals get more and more responsibility and more demands on their time, you are all being faced with the challenge of being more intentional with your time. And we believe that well-run companies that are intentional with all the employees' time tend to be full of people who are very intentional about their individual time, and that there's an actual connection between simple questions like, do you want to intentionally take a break in the middle of the day to step out and eat a nutritious meal, that there's actually a line that you can draw, a direct line from that kind of intentionality around how you spend your time, all the way up to, if you're a executive of a company, to whether your company as a whole is spending time on its number one objective for the quarter. And it may seem a little far-fetched at first, but it's all part of the same problem, which is intentional time management. And so we start here in the most simple and universal pain points, whether it be making a little break for you to get a bite to eat, or addressing the universal pain of being perpetually behind on your inbox and spending time, in the evenings, instead of spending time with your family or friends, spending time in the evenings on going through your inbox, as well as, blocking out time for personal commitments like doctor's appointments or, date nights or vacations and things like that, so that you don't get caught by surprise because of scheduling conflicts. So that's really where Reclaim starts. And as some of you may have already experienced, as we've expanded into scheduling between multiple people with our Smart One-on-Ones capability, and as we have expanded into integrations with project management platforms, we are beginning to tap into the prioritization of the business as a whole. And that's where you'll see a lot more coming from Reclaim in the coming years. So that's kind of the background and the vision of what we're trying to build. But before we go any deeper on that kind of stuff, I want to highlight a few things about habits and tasks in particular that not everybody may be aware of. So probably most of you already have seen this screen, maybe even customized some of these things yourselves. We are, as I mentioned, we are encouraging you to be intentional about your time, and that includes choosing what's most and least important to you, and what the guidance is to the platform around when is a good time, the ideal time for you to have lunch, what is an acceptable range of time, what is the earliest and the latest that you could do these things. And there's a whole bunch of other settings. I won't go through those today. But all of it is about coaching Reclaim and helping Reclaim understand what matters to you most. What you might not be familiar with, though, even if you've seen those screens, is what Reclaim is doing under the covers. And so, for example, I want you to look closely at this schedule that we're seeing here. And you probably have noticed these funny little emojis. Some of them say free and some of them have a little shield. And you might not have known what they're doing, but they're very important signals for you and for the people you work with. So for example, right here, lunch on Tuesday the 19th at 11:30 has this little free emoji. And if you look closely, it says it's private and it's free. Whereas the one on the 21st says it's public and not free, it's busy, and it has this shield emoji. And what that does is it makes it so that if someone else was trying to find time to meet with you, like a coworker, or maybe somebody who's using a scheduling service like Calendly, if they are looking at your availability, they're going to see some things are busy and blocked out, but other things like Tuesday and Friday, there's flexibility. They're not even seeing those lunch blocks. And if you also notice that morning catch up and afternoon catch up is not visible any of the days next week except for Thursday, which is a very packed day of meetings. And so first thing I wanted to highlight for everyone to really make sure they understand and get value out of is that just because your calendar might look full of lots of things, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not still having flexibility presented externally to the people that you work with. And that's part of Reclaim's mission, is to give you flexibility and do the job, which often includes meeting with people, but only do it up until you are you're not at risk of not achieving those goals that you've told Reclaim matter to you, whether it's due dates for tasks or certain frequencies of habits. So that's just one thing. Not everybody immediately understands how Reclaim is managing that. And then similarly, if you suddenly need to go to the doctor on a given day, and you also have a meeting, you will see that in a moment Reclaim will detect that you just got busier, and it will automatically go ahead and take care of blocking out that lunchtime. So what once looked like free time now starts to look like busy time. And so it defends. That's why we use the shield emoji. It's all about defending that time so that you don't get it stolen away once it sees that that's near the last or the second to last slot on the calendar. And so now you can see that meeting is now busy and has the shield. And then similarly, if this time frees up, your schedule gets relaxed again, it will flip back to being open. So if you're more of a technically or electrical minded person, you can think of Reclaim acting as a circuit breaker for many of your time blocks on your calendar. The other thing that is not always appreciated is that Reclaim is also adaptable to your inputs. So when you're defining your habits and tasks, you're giving it's a rules-based system. You're telling us what are the most important habits by stack ranking them, but you're also telling us the range of time for each one. But you can override that. You should feel very comfortable in your calendar app, whether it's Google Calendar or Fantastical or any other calendar app, making adjustments like I just did here on Friday, saying, but at the end of the week, I just want to, really get some time spent on my inbox and catch up on all the little miscellaneous things. And so I just overrode for that particular day by making these edits right in line. You can do this in the planner as well. It's both places are totally fine to do. So you could shrink it and grow it here, or you could do it right on the calendar. What's cool about this is it still adapts. So you just gave us a new preference for that day. You said, okay, I'd really like to get at least an hour and a half. But if another urgent meeting lands on top of that time, Reclaim will still acknowledge it and adapt accordingly. And so that's just one of those nice capabilities where you can feel comfortable about making changes and coaching the system, but also know that it'll continue to adapt and defend you and work within the constraints. Um, so that's kind of the high level of habits, and it's really a nice foundational piece. And so hopefully even those of you who've been using the product have got some comfort and learned a little bit more about the baseline of habits. Tasks are in a lot of ways sort of an extension of habits, in that like habits, tasks also can bounce between free or busy depending on how full your schedule is. The key difference is that tasks have a due date. They have a very clear input that is telling you whether, telling Reclaim whether something is important to you soon or later. So for example, oops, I'm in Google Calendar. I meant to come in here. If I say I want, check the mail, I need 30 minutes to check the mail, and it's due Friday at 2 o'clock. So I can go ahead and schedule that, and you'll see that in a moment, it's scheduled for tomorrow. So if we go look at this week, there it is. It's on my calendar. And one thing you'll notice is that, coming back also to Google Calendar, let's go to the right week, it has that shield. And the reason it has the shield is that it was due at 2 o'clock. And this was really the last amount of time. If you look at my calendar and my working hours, there wasn't any more time to do this particular task. But if I decide that actually, it's not that urgently done, or it doesn't need to be done, this week, maybe it doesn't, I don't need to do it till next week, then by relaxing that due date, notice it just got this dashed outline. And similarly, it now has a free emoji. And so I wanted to highlight how the due date impacts the free busy signals. The due date doesn't actually impact the scheduling. So for example, if I also need 30 minutes to write a presentation, you'll see, oops, I set that accidentally as personal. Let's change that to work. So there's they're scheduled near each other. You'll see that writing the presentation, while it's due sooner and it's scheduled higher, because by default we do keep the list order by due date, you can change that. If any of you are familiar with the Eisenhower matrix, is what it's sometimes known by. There's the important or versus urgent. Sometimes you can say, I know this is due sooner, but it's actually less important. And so by dragging that down, if you didn't catch it, check the mail replaced write presentation. And then similarly, I can bring it back up and you'll see check the mail will flip back over to write presentation. So this order here controls the scheduling order. And then the due dates control the defensiveness, whether it's going to be marked as free or busy. You can also always sort your list by due date. And so if you've kind of got it all jumbled up and you just want to kind of reset things, this little button will take care of that for you as well. So we got one question that just came in. I'll address them as they come. Can any certain tasks be set to overlap during travel time? The short answer to that is no, not currently. That's something that we're looking at improving in the near future. So I understand the use case for that, in particular phone calls, hopefully no video calls or writing of email during travel time, unless you're on a train. But yes, that's something that we're hoping to make accessible and easier for folks. So yeah, that's tasks. Again, hopefully some of that scheduling and ordering was new and kind of learned, something you're learning there. The ordering, for example, that's actually relatively new to Reclaim. We used to always schedule by due date, and we didn't have alternative scheduling options. This dragging ability only showed up a few months ago. So if you've been with us for a while, you might not have known that until fairly recently. The next thing I want to highlight are some tips about tasks, and in particular integrations. And so the first one I'll highlight is actually an integration that's in our free plan. You don't even need to pay for anything from Reclaim to take advantage of this. You've probably all seen we have a lot of different integrations, including some of them like Todoist, which is in our Pro plan, and then project management like Linear, Jira, Asana, and ClickUp that are in our team plan. And we're going to keep adding more and more of these because it fits with our vision about a connected system that understands what's important to you and your business. But Google Tasks we make available for everybody, as well as Slack and Zoom and whatnot. And Google Tasks I just want to highlight because this is a common pattern that folks have, which is you get an email, and it's one of these, like, if you can't read the text here, it says, please review and get back to me with any comments as soon as possible. If you've ever had one of those where it's like this really big, complicated email, and you're just like, I can't do that right now. I have to get through the rest of my inbox. I need to carve out time to really read and process and respond to this big, important email. And so if you haven't ever seen it before, there's an add to task button right inside of Gmail. It's just a normal integration in Gmail. But if you've powered up Reclaim with Google Tasks, then what you can do is you can make it so that when you click add to tasks, or you press, if you're a keyboard shortcut person, it's Shift T. So there's a whole set of keyboard shortcuts in Gmail. So if I just press Shift T, you'll see that this thing just became a task right here on the right-hand side. And within a few more seconds, Reclaim will pick that up and automatically, there it goes, automatically set some default due dates and get it in as a task on your calendar. And so here you can see a task found its way into Reclaim, and momentarily it should also be on my my calendar. We'll see it scheduled here in just a second. So that's just a nice little tip for you if you haven't experienced the Gmail integration. You might be a Todoist user, you might like Reclaim's native task creation, but I encourage everybody to also wire up Google Tasks just for this reason alone. If there's ever those big gnarly emails that you just need to make time for, it's a really quick and convenient way to get time blocked out on the calendar. So here you can see it's scheduled for tomorrow in the afternoon. So that's one tip I wanted to provide, folks. There are other integrations I'll also highlight just briefly, and then we'll move on to some of the other functionality. Todoist is popular. I'm guessing we have at least a few Todoist users in the audience. I'm not going to do that one today. It's pretty straightforward on how to get it going. You pick projects, either all of your projects or a subset. You can choose to label it to require syncing to Reclaim only when you label it the word Reclaim, or you can have it for all of them. There's things, different ways to set it up that fits your profile. But what I wanted to highlight is some of the project management integration for those of you that are dealing with project management software. And it could be any of these. I'm going to do Linear today just because it's a fun one. It's more of a techie but project management platform, but it's a very similar technique for Asana and ClickUp. So for example, the way these project management platforms all work is you get some sort of task into the project. And so let's say build prototype might be a project that gets assigned to you. And you might say, you give it an estimate. And so I'm going to say it's a medium amount of work, and I'm going to give it that Reclaim label that I just talked about because I have it configured to only work when I give it the Reclaim label. And I'm going to set it for a certain a cycle. That's just the kind of it's like sprints or cycles or time period. And in this case, in Linear, you can see it says July 4th to July 17th. And so I go ahead and save that, and you'll see in just a moment, Reclaim's very responsive and will automatically get that task entered into the Reclaim platform. And in a few more seconds, we'll take care of the scheduling like we just saw with Google Tasks as well. And what's neat about the integrations with the project management, here you can see it actually broke up that medium task into several different pieces. What's neat about it is it actually starts highlighting context to your colleagues. And so even my non-Reclaim friends that I'm working with, they can see that I have something that's set for cycle 12, which is supposed to be due by July 17th. That's just a few days. And the first scheduled time is on July 18th. I literally don't have time to get this thing done I could fix that to some degree by prioritizing the prototype, and that'll help, but it won't, it won't completely solve the problem. And then similarly, because there's a lot of work to be done, so now, pulled forward a little bit. But I could also, by seeing this information, my project manager or myself, we could talk about it and say, what, let's just push it back. Let's get it to July 18th. And what's neat about that is that is automatically updating, and all of our project management integrations work the same way, the dates on it as well. So that by just moving it to a new cycle, that now in this case is July 18th to July 31st, you can see similarly the dates here also updated accordingly. So it's due, basically at the end of July 31st, and it doesn't start before the 18th. So whether you use Asana or ClickUp or Jira or Linear, similar techniques apply, and it's a really nice way to get on the fly capacity planning. You've probably all been in the same boat at times where you sign up, you commit for a certain amount of work, and then you leave the planning meeting and you say, oh my God, I forgot I'm on vacation next week. This can actually pull those conflicts up much faster and get it highlighted for you and your coworkers to see. So I wanted to also share that. So if you hadn't experienced some of those integrations, to see what that looks like. I think I'll probably jump over to Smart One-on-Ones as we begin to kind of close the demo and fully open things up for Q&A. There are other capabilities inside of Reclaim I can certainly dive deeper into if folks have questions on them. Things like our automated color coding system, calendar sync related questions, how the Slack integration works. But obviously task habits and Smart One-on-Ones are kind of the main three. Actually, because this question already came up, before I go to Smart One-on-Ones, I do want to cover the question of what happens when kind of plans change. I think that was asked a little bit earlier by Claire. So yeah, let's talk about that. So let's say, for example, let's say that I'm looking back, I was actually out sick most of the week, and I was so ill, I didn't even have time to update my calendar or mark it as sick. I just, wasn't feeling good. And so I look back at something like this, write the architecture proposal. And I'm like, oh, I definitely did not get that thing done. So let's go ahead and delete that. Or actually, I can even use something we were just looking at. Let's just say that proposal, that email proposal that I had scheduled, maybe it was scheduled earlier today, and I realized I didn't actually get it done. So first thing to highlight is that if something is scheduled in arrears, if it's in the past, you'll notice it goes into this state called done scheduling. This is kind of a hybrid state where it's not done, but Reclaim is not going to schedule any more time for it. And that's because you told us that you needed 30 minutes, and there are 30 minutes on the calendar in the past. And so we hold it for you and we tell you it's done scheduling, and you can either confirm that it's done, or you could tell us that you didn't do it. And there's two ways to do that. One is you can right click on it right here in the planner and click reschedule. Or if you like staying in the calendar, you literally can just delete it from the calendar. And by doing that, it really leans into this idea in Reclaim that the calendar is the source of truth, and that it will constantly adapt to whatever you tell us happened. Similarly, if I didn't have these one-on-one meetings, we'll talk about one-on-ones in a moment, I could delete them, and Reclaim will realize it needs to reschedule them as soon as possible. So in this case, I'm going to say, you know what, actually, I got a late start. I didn't get a chance to review that proposal. So I got rid of it. I just deleted it right off the calendar. Well, by doing that, Reclaim knows that you still need that time done, but now no longer sees that time on the calendar. And so in a moment, we will see that it will just get rescheduled back on the calendar. So in this case, next week, where is it? Right there. So it just got put back on my calendar because I deleted that event off the calendar. So to the question earlier about how you make adjustments on the fly, you pretty much just correct the truth. That's the short answer. We are looking at in our roadmap some ideas around automatically declaring kind of bankruptcy on certain tasks in the past if you haven't confirmed they were done within, say, 3 days or 1 day. So we're hoping to make that workflow even faster. But the nice thing about it, even as it exists today, is it really helps you make sure that your calendar, as it's seen in arrears backwards, really reflects what happened at a high level. And that's nice because it lets you look back and reflect on your week and look forward and also think about what your next week is going to be like. And so we find that it kind of aligns the incentive of correcting the record and ensuring that the record is generally pretty close. The other thing I wanted to highlight, though, is it doesn't have to just be full wholesale deletion. You could, for example, this is kind of a little bit of a contrived one, but you could say, you know what, I wrote some of the presentation. I wrote 15 minutes of the presentation. And so that can, you notice, like, as soon as I shrunk that down, it also then updated and put another 15 minutes in the future. Similarly, you could say, actually, I spent more time than I planned. And so, let me expand it. And you can see by expanding it, we're back to the done scheduling state. So again, just reiterating, the calendar is the truth about what's happening in your with all of your tasks and habits, and you should feel comfortable either in Reclaim's planner or just right in Google, adjusting them to reflect that truth. So I hope that answered your question there. Okay, smart one-on-ones. This is where we're getting into scheduling between multiple people. Everything you've seen to date, and probably most of the features you've used, are about blocking out time for yourself. But we recognize, and we'd heard from our customers, that smart one-on-one, or that one-on-one meetings are often the most flexible in meetings that you have with anybody else. And so they look a lot like habits in that you can state how often you want to meet and what duration you want to meet. You can control kind of the frequency at which, if you're meeting quarterly, when you want your next one to start. So those kind of things are also possible. And then finally, you can set, the ideal time. So you might say, ideally, I want to get all of my one-on-ones done on Thursday mornings. But if you or the other person is unavailable on Thursday, Reclaim will find the next best time. I'll dive back into some of the more advanced settings here, but that's the main idea. The key thing is we're now looking at both parties' availability. And what's great about it is that Reclaim's pretty good at still keeping it at a consistent time slot. You can see here, every time it's at the same time each week. And we know, because humans are creatures of habit. I said it's ideally at 8 a.m., but it looks like I've got other things going on those Thursdays at 8 a.m. And so it's finding the next closest time to that, and it's holding it every week. But there might be a week that I'm unavailable. Like maybe I'm, out camping, PTO. And so I could mark myself as busy for those couple of days. I've gone on vacation. And when I do that, or any of the attendees I meet with do that, Reclaim will automatically see that and move those smart one-on-ones to the very next best time. So in this case, we'll see in just a moment, I have 3 smart one-on-ones on Thursday. They will all shift over to another day that fits both of our availability. So you can see they all shifted over to Tuesday. And you might be looking at this calendar and say, well, why didn't it go to Wednesday? There seems to be slots of time on Wednesday. And I'll tell you why it didn't go to Wednesday. That's because in this account, I've configured my account to not do meetings on Wednesdays. I've kind of established a no meeting Wednesday rule for myself. And so I took Wednesdays off as my own preferred meeting times. You also note I don't like doing afternoon meetings on Mondays or on Fridays. And so the scheduler respects both the organizer and the attendees' personal preferences and meeting hours. It'll highlight if it's impossible to find time. But generally, this is a nice way to let both parties kind of declare their intent, deal with time zones, deal with shifting availability, and still make sure you get the time scheduled. So that is smart one-on-ones. There are a lot of additional capabilities inside of here. Things like being able to either use your normal meeting hours, like I was just highlighting, or to say, you know what, for this person, I'm willing to, meet on weekends. Maybe this is somebody, it's a personal connection, and I just want to meet on the weekends, not during my normal meeting hours. Or maybe it's someone who's overseas and I need to stretch my availability more than I normally would. So that's an example of where you'd override those things. And then we also support attaching various video conferencing solutions. One thing to note is you'll see there's Zoom. We have native Zoom integration and Google Meet integration, but you actually can do any video conferencing solution. The way you do it is you just come into any one of these one-on-one meetings and you just edit it. Again, the philosophy of Reclaim is just meet you where you are, be on the calendar, and you just edit it and you add whether you've got Google Meet or Zoom or Ring Central or any of the number of other video conferencing solutions. And you get all those, if you're not familiar with it, by just clicking this little plus and installing one of these workspace add-ons. And when you do that, Reclaim will detect that, pick it up, and use it for all subsequent one-on-ones going forward. And so that's how you can go beyond the native integrations we provide, and you can connect in any video conferencing solution to your meetings. So I'll pause for a moment and just check in to see if there's any additional questions. Otherwise, I think that we might wrap up here. All right. I'm not seeing any. I'll give it a couple more seconds, and then like I said, if something jumps to mind, or you're having technical difficulties and can't get the questions out, please feel free to ask them in our support channel, or which you can get to by clicking help. That's actually, if you've been with us for a little while, you might have noticed there used to be a little bubble that was in the right-hand corner, and we got rid of the bubble because it was kind of getting in the way of some of the UI. And so now you can get to it by just clicking the help link. Oh, we did get a couple more questions that came in, so that's great. So one of them, unfortunately, I can answer quickly, but only because it's a disappointing answer. Someone asked, can we see the Monday integration? And the answer is not yet. It is not yet out. If you go to the integrations page, what you'll see is there's a keep me posted link that I encourage you to click. And anybody who clicks that link for either Monday or Trello, they will be the first to get access to the private beta for these integrations. So stay tuned. We are planning and working with the Monday team, but we don't have anything to show today. We got one more question. If I have a work task that needs to be scheduled during personal time, can I allow Reclaim to schedule that, or just manually create it? I think I understand the question, but first I just want to say, as a matter of general practice and advice for using Reclaim, I do encourage all of you to lean into the platform and take advantage of getting your tasks scheduled, but don't stress too much about the exact scheduling. For example, Mark asks, or should I just manually create it? There's nothing wrong if you just want to say, you know what, I just, go to the bank, that's okay. It's fine to block out time on your calendar. You don't feel like you have to run everything through the task platform. You can do too much, is I guess what I'm trying to get at, in terms of trying to get too many tasks scheduled and then stressing whether the scheduler is getting it exactly right. That said, if you do have something on the schedule that you really want to lock in and kind of put at your own time, you can do that. And I'm going to demo, actually, I'm glad we're answering some questions here. I'm going to demo the workspace add-on. If you don't have this, I highly recommend you get it. You can just click this little plus in Google Calendar, search for Reclaim, and you'll get it here, or you can go into the integrations page in the Reclaim app and find it that way. And what's nice about it is you can get access to capabilities right here, like lock. And so, Mark, one of your questions was, what if I want to just get something on the calendar? You could just put a block, or you could also lock tasks. And then when a task is locked, you could drag it, for example, right during a personal commitment. And now it's just there. And so The lock capability is a little known one, but it's really nice if you want to like force something to be either, not move from where it is or even have it overlap with other busy times. You can get to lock by, let me go to that next week. Again, through the add-on like I just showed you, or also just clicking it here or right-clicking on the particular event. So hopefully that kind of answered your question. I will add that we are planning in the very near future to give you control, because I think there's a related topic, give you control to have more kinds of hours. So imagine like bank hours or focus hours, and those would be additional categories that you could then feed your tasks into. All right, great. We got a few more questions. What happens when you don't track the time using start stop? That's a great question. And what I will say is, don't stress it. In fact, I would prefer that you not feel obligated to go back and, be on Reclaim all the time. Don't get me wrong. I'd love it if you were using Reclaim a ton, but we want you to feel free and flexible to just go with the flow, do your day, and then come back and just correct the record. So for example, what if you forgot to say start on this particular task, check the mail? Maybe it was something you were going to do while you're in this competitive Intel committee meeting, and you just said, oops, I forgot to do it. You can just drag it. You can just say, you know what, I started it 20 minutes ago. Let me just put it on the calendar. And that's it. You're good to go. Similarly, if it's going longer than you actually had done, you can just truncate it and say, I think I stopped it around there. And all those adjustments immediately feed back into the Reclaim scheduler. You can see as I was doing that, time was being put back and forth on the calendar. So don't worry about it. You can always just correct the record on the calendar, and Reclaim will react appropriately to that. So I hope that answered that question. Is there a beta group? Yeah, there's a couple ways you can kind of get early access to our stuff. One, like I said, is for a few of these, you can click keep me updated, and that puts you at the front of the line. You can also join our Slack community. You can it's in our help site to find the link to join our Slack community, and we usually extend early betas to folks there as well. There's a few hundred other Reclaim users that are participating there. Okay, we've got one more question that came in. If I'm syncing multiple calendars, what do other users see when booking things into my calendar when Reclaim is dealing with things from other calendars? That's a great question. There's often a concern about what do people see. And we try to help with that with this View as Others feature in the planner. So if you haven't seen this, please take advantage of it. What it's doing is it's presenting to you what your calendar looks like to the average person. So that's not to guarantee that this is how it looks to everybody, but what it's doing is it's showing how your calendar appears to your average coworker if you're in a Google Workspace account, or to anybody if you're on a regular Gmail account. So you can see in this case, it's just a bunch of busy events, and you can see a lot of my tasks are busy, but my habits are not. By design, they're meant to be seen. And here is a synced event. And so, the question was about synced events. You can see it actually shows as personal commitment, which matches what I see on the calendar too. And the reason I see personal commitment and other people see personal commitment is because the calendar sync policy itself was configured this way. There's a visibility section that you can customize. And so by default, we recommend this. This visibility is actually the one that's in our free plan as well. And we think it's actually the best one. Because it does a really good job of balancing giving you context and giving your coworkers context about what's going on without giving too many details. So you can see the embarrassing example we like to use here is you probably would never want job interview with some other company to be on your work calendar, but personal commitment might be just fine. And the key thing to understand is that sometimes people like the event details. And the reason they like event details is because then they can see it right here on their calendar. The problem is, and we give you big warnings here, is that IT administrators can sometimes see even things that are marked as private. So most other people will see busy, but some people, if those words land on your calendar, could still see those details. So you got to be careful with this one. And I would just encourage you to only choose these other two options if you have absolute trust that what lands on that target calendar is safe. Otherwise, I'd recommend something more opaque, like personal commitment and busy for all. Now, the problem, of course, with that is you don't have the context. If you're looking just at this calendar view, you might be like, what the heck are we doing Friday night? I can't remember. There's two ways to solve that. One is you could share the source calendar with your work account, and then you would see both events overlapping. Might look a little bit like a duplicate, but that's by design because it's creating a firewall between the two. Or you can install that add-on that I just showed a minute ago, and you'll notice that when you click on the add-on, we show you what other people see, and we also show you where it's syncing from. And so we give you some additional information, and we can let you get right to the event and see all that information. So that helps you. That kind of helps you get context and orient yourself on your own calendar. So I hope that answered that question. I think we are pretty much at time and also done with questions. So I hope that was instructive to all of you. And I really appreciate everyone joining us. And I apologize again for the early technical difficulties. But thank you so much. And we look forward to connecting with you in our community.